researcher called Yankolovich was saying, when you're talking about measurement, the first step is to measure whatever can be easily measured, that's fine. The second step is to disregard which can't be measured easily, or give it an arbitrary value. As you can see, that's artificial and misleading. The third step is to presume what can't be measured isn't really important. We've all had that, that's blindness. And the fourth step is to say that what can't be easily measured doesn't really exist. Now, for 30 years I've had this problem, actually, unfortunately, because for many years, like when we discussed these things about the Media Centre 15 years ago, there was a lot of stuff about creativity, the value of culture, all of those words that you can see. And I'm frankly not interested in answering that question anymore, because actually it's much more interesting to ask the question, what's the cost of not taking these things into account? And when you look at projects that don't take these broader things into account, you usually can see the impact of that. So I want to just focus for a second on culture. Obviously we realise, as it says here, that culture, the most complex artefact, cultural artefact, is of course the city. And it embeds a culture, and reading the words, it explains its social order, dynamics, look and feel, and so on. So whether we like it or not, the culture of the place determines whether we can be sustainable in the other senses that I think you've been talking about over the last periods. Now I want to just summarise a couple of things. I've been to those bigger events like the Expo, which as you can see was about better cities, better life, talked about new mobility. Many of you were there as examples of case studies and so on yourself. And I also went to the Biennale, which is also about the future of urban planning and design this year. And I was also part of a jury about Überlebenskunst, which is a German thing funded by the Cultural Ministry, which is also about the future of cities. And some of the messages that came through were really very interesting, beyond the obvious ones that we need to sort of reduce our carbon footprint. And what you'll note, that all of them seem to be talking about this notion of having some sort of, obviously, as Jean-Louis said, integrated vision that connects things together in a more comprehensive and inclusive way. And often talking about ideals, and there was an image there of Palmanova, here is another image of Palmanova near Trieste, one of the ideal cities from the Renaissance, or our garden city. And you'll notice that they're all quite round. I'm only showing this as a thought experiment, but many of the places that are seen as our ideal are really round, or that we love, and so on. However, what cities look like, as you know, is completely different. They're all very grid-like, straight-lined, and so on. Now, that has a bigger importance for me, because there's a difference between linear thinking and rounded and more comprehensive thinking. And so one of the issues that really I feel is important is to look at the city from an experiential point of view. And just to take the Biennale as an example, a lot of what we were talking about, the radiant city, of course, is Le Corbusier's idea of modernism and so on. But a lot of the examples there were saying that doesn't really work. The way we build cities aren't really, they're missing something. They divided functions. They left things out completely. And many of the project examples were trying to make themselves invisible, as if they were trying to make an apology. Here are just two examples of two of the major displays. You can hardly see anything, so it's as a bit if urban designers and architects are saying, I don't really exist anymore, I don't want to, or I'm embarrassed. Now, of course, we know that cities are about meeting, talking, interacting in various ways, exchanging things, that out of which comes trade and so on. So that's the context we're trying to create. But if you look at things from a helicopter position, you can see that more and more people, and this is an aspect of sustainability, I believe, are talking really about things that are beyond the obvious, in a sense they're rediscussing old-fashioned words like beauty, or something that lifts the soul, that does something to the spirit when you live and are in a city. Here in Amsterdam, for example, this property developer is even having signs of yoga in front of the development. But you get the point I'm trying to make. And the other thing that was absolutely surprising for me, at least, that one of the main themes of the World Expo was to be creative. And I gave a talk at the UN Pavilion, and it was only about this one topic. How can we in trying to make better, more sustainability, being more sustainable, how can we incorporate creativity and empowering people to be part, makers, shapers, co-creators of the invention of their city? So I'm just hoping and I'm assuming that you, within your indicator sets, are taking these types of issues into account. The second major theme that was surprising, and I'm glad that they're saying it, not me, was that culture needs to move centre stage. What they meant by that, a cultural perspective, an understanding of where a place comes from, where it is, and therefore how it could go. Because of course the sustainability agenda, seen in a narrow way, of course is about behaviour change and about transformation. So how do you get people to actually transform themselves, which is a cultural question. And the final thing that came really across in that is don't let the next generation down. I don't think in boxes in one way or another. So one of the issues I've asked myself in this context, why are places not sustainable? I mean, I know you're asking that yourself all the time. Why are they not healthy? Why doesn't incidentally being in the city just make you healthy? Why doesn't incidentally being in the city just encourage you to be imaginative in some sort of sense? And the reason is, I think, that we don't really look at places from an aesthetic perspective. And when I say aesthetic, I mean ugliness, beauty, the senses through the senses. This is a major new shopping centre in the middle of Berlin, which says no. And there are many places and environments that say no. So part of sustainability is creating environments that feel more like yes than no, that feel less like this. This is obviously bitumen, this is Los Angeles, we may think of Hollywood, but this is actually what it feels like. And it's based on an urban engineering approach to problems, a technical view of how cities are put together, rather than one that is based more on the senses and so on. And that is the difference between what I call creative city making and ordinary city making. Creative city making blends hardware thinking with software thinking. Now this image is a very logical image. Everything done here is completely logical, because each department said, these are my rules, and this is what they ended up with. I know what this place feels like. It's in Perth, Australia. I lived 50 metres away from it. And that is the environment they created, because what it was seen as was purely as an engineering project. And Jean-Loup mentioned the word people, but a person's perspective, a psychological perspective, wasn't taken on that. And that's how most of our places look like and feel like. You've been to these places, I don't need to mention them. But the decision-making that is fragmented has led to these types of places. And some of this might look quite interesting, this is Chicago. But the reality is that one should have really rethought things, particularly as we know we're getting to peak oil production in a very short while. And recently I was just driving to a conference, and this is near Genoa, and I love Genoa, by the way, but this is just the experience of getting there to the event, which was very near this, yes? So you can see that Baroque building next to that motorway. Now this is a very common sort of experience that we're generating in our cities. Now, leaving aside that the materials may not be carbon neutral and all of that, there is a sustainability aspect in terms of what psychologically is happening to you as you navigate these types of spaces. This is near a theatre school in Norwich, just so you thought, you know, just very next door to it. So you're getting the sense that I'm trying to put across. Another aspect, of course, is the blandness that we see everywhere. And of course, again, this is reinforced by the notion that everything should happen quickly and fast, like here in Romania, 24-hour funeral services. You can die in the middle of the night and immediately be buried. You know, it's a wonderful sort of life where things are happening fast, where things are moving, and in that movement, flow. This is all wonderful, isn't it? Change. We hate stability. Dynamic is good, static is bad, all of that. You don't understand the bloody thing anymore because everything's a blur. That's the world that perhaps in its own way is not very sustainable. And of course, in some senses, many people are saying that's not really the way forward. But others might say, well, I don't want to look at that. But there's an important issue. If you ask people to name and describe places they love, this is the sort of imagery that they come up with. And of course, this is a typical Italian town. It's like that, colours, there's a blend of different types of, I suppose, colour schemes here. It feels quite a personal space. There's diversity in the street. There are names of shops you've never seen. You can't understand what these products are. We call this all, I suppose, local identity. And even old guys have babies, you know, because they're refreshed by living in these types of contexts. And you get the idea of what I'm talking about. So the central question I'm asking here is, can we somehow recapture in your integrated sustainability, etc., framework that you're talking about, some of these issues? Now, one of the problems is, and you can see graffiti is always very useful, there's a lot of graffiti that says, I love you, do I love you, do I love my city? But the cities we love, we cannot build anymore because the rules forbid it. The things I precisely showed you from that Italian city that we love, which statistically I'm continually finding that people say, that is what I want, you cannot build. I could elaborate on that for the next half hour, but I won't.